Hey, welcome back, guys. So, I know a lot of y'all are worried about starting your handyman business because you don't think you have enough experience to actually take care of everything for everybody, and that's okay. You don't have to do that. So, what I'm going to show you today is 17 individual niches that you can niche down into with your handyman business, each of which costs less than $1,000 to get started with. So, at this point, by the end of this video, there's really not much of an excuse to not at least start your handyman business on the side if that's what you've been dreaming of. For each of these specialties, we're going to talk about how much money you can make, what licenses you may or may not need, what tools you need, how much it's going to cost to get started, and any other useful information that you might want to know before diving in. So whether you just started swinging a hammer yesterday, or if you've been in the trades for like 10 years and you're just tired of leaving money on the table, there's probably going to be a specialty in this list of 17 that's just the right fit for you. And at the end, I'll go ahead and tell you which one I would start out with if I had to start from scratch in a new city with only $1,000 in my pocket today. So instead of wasting any more time talking about it, let's actually dive in. So we'll start first with toilet repair. And one of my favorite things about toilet repair is this one requires very few tools and very few skills. You can get by with $100 at Home Depot will get you all the tools you need, and another $50 will get you all the parts you need. And honestly, an hour on YouTube is going to get you most of the skills you need. So this is a really low barrier to entry one for me. And customer demand is high, repeatability is high. Property managers always need people to work on toilets. Every house has got a toilet that's constantly running. So there is no shortage of work to be had if you're specializing in toilets. And it's not physically difficult unless you're replacing the toilet, which is not a service you really have to provide. However, I do want to point this out. The liability risk is high and the licensing risk is high. In a lot of states, if not most states, you might need a license to be able to work on any plumbing at all, including toilets just with their accessories. And then the liability is the same thing. One wrong move and you can crack the porcelain, and now you've got to replace that entire toilet, plus it's plumbing. So if you screw anything up, you could flood somebody's house. Now, as far as revenue, you're talking about $150 to $300 per trip, 3 to 4 trips a day. And by the way, you could do 6 to 8 trips a day. I've done 6 to 8 trips a day, and toilets are always fast and easy to work on. But this gives us a revenue in the end of what, $78,000 to $312,000. Ignore those numbers for the most part. You can make as little as you want to. You can make as much as you want to. This is about how you build your business. So toilets, in summary, they're cheap to get into as far as tools. They're easy to get into as far as knowledge. There's lots of work to be done. And really the only downside you need to worry about is just the high liability and making sure you don't need a license. So toilets are very close up to the top of my list. Now, moving on to number 2, again, in no particular order. Let's talk about ceiling fans. Again, we've got $150 to $300 per ticket, 2 to 4 tickets per day. Could be more, but ceiling fans do take a little bit more time if you're going to do them right, and there's a lot of different styles. But that brings us again to that same $78,000 to $312,000 a year that you can make in actual labor revenue, labor only, labor revenue for your business, just working on ceiling fans. However, they are not necessarily super easy to learn. Yes, you can DIY it. Any intelligent person can go buy one from Home Depot, bring it home, and eventually get it figured out. But if you're trying to learn this as a business, you are going to have to learn a lot of different styles, and you're going to have to learn some wiring. You're going to have to learn wireless remotes. You're going to have to learn how to balance them, and they're not all going to go absolutely perfectly. So yes, you can do it 100%, but don't look at ceiling fans as if they are just the easiest thing in the world. Plus, the liability risk is high because they're up on the ceiling. They could fall down on somebody, and they're electrical, so they could catch a house on fire. And the licensing risk is high because in most states, you are going to be required to have some sort of electrical license to work on anything electrical, which would include a ceiling fan. The good news is the customer demand is high and the property manager fit is high, and physical difficulty is medium to low, so it's going to be really easy for you to work on physically too, as long as you don't mind being up on top of a ladder. Now, as far as tools, it's going to be all your basic stuff. You're going to need your ladder, you're going to need your basic hand tools, your drill, and some sort of kit for working on electrical items. And that's, for the most part, all you're going to need to work on ceiling fans. So that is a nice big bonus. So for ceiling fans, it's not my first choice for you, but I tell you what, it is high demand, it is high revenue, it's a skill that you can learn quickly, and if it's what you want to do, then I think you should go ahead and pursue that. Now, moving on to smoke detectors, these are going to be really nice because every home needs to have them and they're going to need to get replaced about every 10 years. And a lot of homeowners worry that that's just out of their wheelhouse and they need to hire a professional. So you might be the professional that they're hiring for this. For the revenue, I'm going to talk about $100 to $175 per trip. But to be clear, that's not the average for replacing all the smoke detectors in the house. That's just the average per trip, with most trips just being some sort of beeping or non-working smoke detector that you're going to troubleshoot, probably just replace, rather than doing the entire house. But I've got it set at $100 to $175 on average per trip. You can do 3 to 6 trips per day. These are super easy to work on. You can replace one smoke detector in about 1 minute if you're already on the ladder with your stuff. The physical act of actually replacing it, super easy. It's getting your ladder and your tools inside that takes up any amount of time. But that brings us to $78,000 to $273,000 per year. This is a very low barrier to entry job as well. Similar to ceiling fans, in fact, even better than ceiling fans, other than a little bit of electrical experience, you're going to be able to get all the tools you need for this by just getting, again, a step ladder, a drill, and your basic hand tools and your basic electrical tools. So very low barrier to entry for smoke detectors and just general home safety. And by the way, when I say home safety, I'm also talking about like door alarms and window alarms and stuff to make sure kids aren't popping doors and windows open and getting out of the house. Now, my two favorite things about niching down to smoke detectors is going to be number one, a high volume, especially with property managers. They always need smoke detectors replaced. And number two, probably most importantly, is the physical difficulty is not just light, it's nearly zero. There's nothing hard about doing these as long as you can access them easily. So you don't have to be He-Man and you don't have to really break your body in half to work with smoke detectors all day, which makes this a great niche for anybody who has physical issues where they're not able to get around and move around and lift heavy stuff and abuse their body as much. The other great thing is that it's extremely beginner friendly. The learning curve is basically zero. You know, there is some liability involved because it is a safety device, but generally speaking, people's smoke detectors aren't blowing up and burning houses down either. And in a lot of states, you don't have to have any kind of licensing to work on them. So in summary, high volume. Everybody needs them worked on. You can charge a fair price for them. It's really easy on your body. And it's just a great way to get your foot in the door to get some new clients anyways. And if you want to talk about one of my favorites, next is going to be door repair. And I will tell you something, when I count up all the jobs that I do in my handyman business, if I go through all my invoices, what I find is that about half of my jobs are actually working on doors. That can be exterior doors, interior doors, bifold doors, bypass doors, accordion doors, sliding glass doors, screen doors, every kind of door you can imagine. That's about half the work that my company actually handles over the long term. And you can do 3 to 6 of these, if not 8 per day, because most of them are very simple and very easy, and you can get in and out of there in like 15 minutes. And of course, you could charge 100 up to 225, 250 per door, even for small, easy tasks. Get a lot of them done per day. Labor revenue potential looks like $78,000 to $351,000, but again, it can be as low as you want. It can be as high as you want. Build your business around the type of revenue you want to make to work yourself as hard as you want to work. And don't worry about what that exact number is. Worry about the fact that you can do better for yourself as a self-employed handyman who's running a legit handyman business, licensed, insured, bonded, everything all across the board. You can do better running that for yourself than you're ever going to do working hourly for anybody else for the rest of your life. It's extremely beginner friendly. The learning curve, although it is there are some things that are maybe going to take you a little bit to figure out how to adjust just right. The learning curve is not really bad. You can learn it as a beginner. Liability risk is really not something you need to worry about, and you're basically never going to need to have a license to work on somebody's door. As far as customer demand and physical difficulty, like I said before, this is a very high demand job, which is the one great thing about it. And by the way, it doesn't matter what kind of handyman business you're running, you need to run it with professional software if you want your clients to view you as a professional. I've been using Jobber for more than 5 years now, since the day I started my business, and they have been absolutely instrumental in me growing my business. You can do quotes and estimates, scheduling, invoicing, client communication, recurring jobs, online payments, job tracking. It's beginner friendly. It's got a quick learning curve, high time savings potential, high professional polish. It's great for solo operators. It's great for growing teams, property managers, recurring services. It's going to make you faster, cleaner, smoother, stronger, better. It's going to automate so many of the things that you need to do, like following up on invoices and sending reminder texts and stuff like that. It's going to take your admin stress way, way, way down. It's going to make you look like a professional from day one. And by the way, there's no paywalls on this channel. And the reason there's no paywalls is because I decided early on, I don't want your money. I will figure out how to get on with the brands that I love, that I trust, and figure out how to negotiate with them. So the way that you help me keep the brands supporting this channel and our community is by clicking that link, getting your free trial. By the way, I do have a webinar coming up on May 27th, 5 p.m. this month. I have a webinar that'll take you into the software, and I'll show you step-by-step how I run my handyman business with the Jobber software, exactly the way I do it, and that'll be your opportunity to ask any other questions you have too. So if you guys like what I'm doing, if you like what I'm putting out, if you want to support what we're doing, and more importantly, if you trust me to have chosen the right software to run my business with, I highly suggest you go to the description of this video or any of my videos, click on that link, get your free 14-day trial, and by the way, that comes with my exclusive discount of 20% off for the first 6 months. I love this software. I grew my entire business with it, and I want you guys to succeed. So click that link, get that free trial, sign up for my webinar, and figure out if Jobber is right for your business. And for your tools and startup costs, like most handyman jobs, you're really just going to need your drill. You're going to need your basic hand tools. For doors, you might want to get a plane. You might even want to have a circular saw and a cut-off tool so that you can cut some metal. But really, it's still very low in terms of barrier to entry to get the tools that you need to start working on these. So in summary, we've got a high demand, we've got a low barrier to entry, both skills and tools wide, and like so many other of these jobs, this one is going to be a really great way to just get your foot in the door with new clients who are then going to want you to fix more expensive and more complex things for them later. Moving on to blinds and window coverings, look at this one. We've got beginner friendly, really quick learning curve. You're not going to need a license for this, and very low liability for working on blinds. So this one, for a lot of y'all, is going to be one of the best ways to break into the scene. The revenue potential, I feel like I don't need to go over this slide too much. Just like all the other ones, it can be as little or as much as you want it to be, but it's clearly going to be more than you're going to make working by the hour for any other employer. Customer demand is high, physical difficulty is low. And as far as repeatability and property manager fit, they're in the middle. You know, there's nothing wrong with this. This is another job that you can take on that's going to help you get your foot in the door with a new client. And tools and startup costs are even lower on this one. You need almost nothing to hang blinds, guys. Almost nothing. So to recap, low barrier to entry financially, low barrier to entry with skills, easy to learn as you go, high volume, high demand. This is another great one to get you guys started out. Now, here's one that I think I'm going to get some pushback from some of y'all on, and that's TV mounting. Because I'm going to say TV mounting is low liability. It's going to be low barrier to entry in terms of skills. It's going to have a really great, really quick learning curve that you can just become an expert in almost immediately. And I know a lot of y'all are going to disagree with me, but I want to point out, when I say low liability, yeah, you can break someone's TV and have to replace their TV, but there are also disclaimers for that. And in my experience, that doesn't actually happen with very many people very often. And as far as the skills, a lot of y'all feel like the skill level required for mounting TVs is higher than I think it is. But I think it's easy. And in my experience, what I have seen with other people as well as with myself is that it actually is an easy job. It's a job most people can learn how to do relatively quickly, including brand new beginners. It's a very finite set of skills. And the liability, again, the liability is just breaking someone's TV, but there's really not a big chance that you're going to burn their house down or anything while you're mounting the TV. So I think that this is actually a low liability job, low barrier to entry in terms of skills that you have to acquire. And then let's talk about the tooling you need. Like so many others, this is mostly just going to be basic hand tools. You're going to need your drill, you're going to need your normal screwdrivers and pliers and whatnot, and then you're going to need, of course, a level and a stud finder so you can make sure everything is level and that you get it into the studs, and a wrench set and a ladder, and that really isn't much, so low barrier to entry tools as well. Customer demand is very high, physical difficulty is very low, but I want to go back to the customer demand. It is really, really high. Everybody wants a TV mounted on their wall, and most people don't want to do that mounting. And I find that a lot of handymen break into this world just by doing TV mounting, and then that starts expanding out into other jobs that those same TV mount clients end up asking you to do later on. However, property manager fit is low. So if you're going to be working for property managers like my company works for them exclusively, just know you're basically never going to be asked to mount a TV for a property manager. That's something that tenants are responsible for. However, you can mount TVs for tenants if your property management company that you're working for approves of you doing so, with the understanding that they or you or somebody's going to need to fill in those holes and remove that mount when they move out of that house. For income, this looks like all the other ones, $125 to $300. I don't usually see it go much outside of that price range. 2 to 4 of them per day, maybe 6 per day when you get fast. But otherwise, again, you're looking at that like 65, anywhere from 50 to 100,000 on the low end, all the way up through over 300,000 on the high end. To be clear, I don't think y'all are going to be doing the 300,000. It's just a big giant range. The point is, you make more doing this or any other handyman job, any other handyman business than you're ever going to make working hourly for your boss right now. In summary, low barrier to entry with skills, low barrier to entry with tools, very, very, very high demand, and easy upsells. Man, moving on to furniture assembly, let me tell y'all something about furniture assembly. Most furniture you're going to assemble actually comes with the tools you're going to need to assemble it. So you may be able to get into this one with literally nothing. However, I do recommend, at the very least, get yourself a drill and a basic set of hand tools, if nothing else. Now, the revenue potential is a little lower on this one. This is a low-skill job. This is something almost anybody can do. But I want to make this point, guys. It's the business that matters. It's not what you're doing. A home service business is not about the task that you perform when you get to the house. A home service business is about all the other stuff that has to happen just right in order to reliably get you to that house to start working on stuff. So don't think of this as high revenue or low revenue, high skill or low skill. This is all about running a business, and you've just got to figure out how to run the right kind of business that gets you to the door to perform whatever task it is. Because the truth is, although furniture assembly is perhaps lower skill, it's not that much lower. All of these jobs are actually pretty easy to figure out over time. Customer demand is high as long as you have fair prices. However, property manager demand or any other large commercial demand with a lot of volume, you're going to find out is going to be very low. But the physical difficulty is medium, and the types of clients who are going to hire you to assemble furniture are definitely not handy. So they are going to be a stepping stone to get your foot in the door to get more work from them in the future. It is beginner friendly. It's got a really low learning curve. There's going to be zero liability and zero licensing. So this is perhaps one of the easiest and quickest to get into. Just keep in mind, like I said, it is a slightly lower skilled job. It's going to be hard to find people, not impossible, but harder to find people who are willing to pay you a really great wage to do this job for them. So in summary, super easy to get into. Just know that you're going to need to learn some new skills and move on past furniture assembly if you want to get into the position where you're really running a large, solid handyman business. So we're moving into dryer cleaning now, and I want to tell y'all something. I almost kind of regret some of the numbers I put in here because these are closer to my numbers. But what I'm going to tell you is for dryer vent cleaning, you can charge, honestly, a lot of money if you can find the right client base. But to do that, you're going to need to be working for homeowners for the most part. And I work exclusively for property managers, so my numbers look lower on here. But for dryer vent cleaning, this is something that most houses are going to need at some point, and they're going to need it to be done by a professional. And when they need it done, they're going to need it to be done now or at least pretty soon. But you can charge really great money for this. And honestly, although a lot of cities do have one big dryer vent cleaning company that you can hire, when you look at their prices, if you just price yours to be competitive with theirs, you're going to do really well with dryer vent cleaning. Now, customer demand is rare, but that doesn't mean it's low, because when they need you, they really need you. And this is also one of those things that not a lot of people do. So you're going to have a lot of high repeat clients, because once they find the one guy who can say yes to this job when everybody else said no, you're going to kind of become their guy. So you're going to get more repeat clients. And on top of that, property managers absolutely need this service. In fact, they do this at most move-outs. So it is a high demand for both homeowners and for property managers at the same time. Although it's not an emergency, it's usually viewed to be pretty urgent. Now, I do want to point out this is beginner friendly and it does have a quick learning curve, but there are a few things you need to know. And I think the number one thing is going to be don't lose your wand and your cleaning tool inside that duct, guys. When you put that in there, you make sure that your drill is set to only turn to the right, clockwise. Do not turn it counterclockwise, or you're going to disconnect your rods and you're going to have that stuck in there, and that's going to be a big deal. So you do want to be careful about that. But otherwise, it is beginner friendly. It's got an easy learning curve, very low liability, and you're almost never going to need a license for it either. So this is a strong niche that people really need to have done. Great upsell potential. You're going to get repeat clients out of it. It's a great fit for all types of clients. And like I said, when it needs to be done, it needs to be done. These people have got to have somebody, and hopefully that somebody is going to be you. Moving on to painting, of course, this is one of the most popular handyman niches, and as long as you're not doing like a full house repaint where a lot of states are going to just cap you on the total revenue and make you get a license for that. Otherwise, this again is going to be low barrier to entry with skills, easy to learn and pick up quickly, very low liability risk, and very low licensing risk. As far as tools, there's basically two levels here. Now, to start off, just painting by hand, almost nothing. You can get by with a pole and a $15 kit from Home Depot, but you are going to want to add a whole lot of stuff to your skills and your services as you do this. You're going to need to be able to patch the walls and stuff. So again, a basic handyman setup is going to be just fine for most of you. But where that second level comes in is whether or not you're going to eventually start spraying or even using power rollers. But when you start getting into the machinery, you can get over $1,000. But this is a great niche to get started in with almost no money. Again, 50 bucks at Home Depot, you can walk away, maybe not with everything you wish you had, but with everything that you have to get started painting today. And it requires very few skills. It's got a high customer demand. It's really easy on your body for the most part. Property managers are going to need you to do it. High upsell potential. Both homeowners and property managers actually are going to need painting done constantly. So this is a great niche to get started in, which is why so many people do get started out as a handyman by just doing some painting on the side. Now, revenue potential, like everything else, guys, it's what you make of it, but you can charge a good premium rate for painting when you become a good premium painter. So in summary, this is one of the best starter niches you can find. Really low barrier to entry in every way, shape, and form. The amount of money you can charge is absolutely just fine, and the demand for your service is just out of this world. And by the way, it doesn't matter what kind of handyman business you're running, you need to run it with professional software if you want your clients to view you as a professional. I've been using Jobber for more than 5 years now, since the day I started my business, and they have been absolutely instrumental in me growing my business. You can do quotes and estimates, scheduling, invoicing, client communication, recurring jobs, online payments, job tracking. It's beginner friendly, it's got a quick learning curve, high time savings potential, high professional polish. It's great for solo operators, it's great for growing teams, property managers, recurring services. It's going to make you faster, cleaner, smoother, stronger, better. It's going to automate so many of the things that you need to do, like following up on invoices and sending reminder texts and stuff like that. It's going to take your admin stress way, way, way down. It's going to make you look like a professional from day one. And by the way, there's no paywalls on this channel. And the reason there's no paywalls is because I decided early on, I don't want your money. I will figure out how to get on with the brands that I love, that I trust, and figure out how to negotiate with them. So the way that you help me keep the brands supporting this channel and our community is by clicking that link, getting your free trial. By the way, I do have a webinar coming up on May 27th, 5 p.m. this month. I have a webinar that'll take you into the software, and I'll show you step by step how I run my handyman business with the Jobber software, exactly the way I do it. And that'll be your opportunity to ask any other questions you have too. So if you guys like what I'm doing, if you like what I'm putting out, if you want to support what we're doing, and more importantly, if you trust me to have chosen the right software to run my business with, I highly suggest you go to the description of this video or any of my videos, click on that link, get your free 14-day trial. And by the way, that comes with my exclusive discount of 20% off for the first 6 months. I love this software. I grew my entire business with it, and I want you guys to succeed. So click that link, get that free trial, sign up for my webinar, and figure out if Jobber is right for your business. So let's move on and talk about drywall repair, because one of my favorite things about drywall repair, similar to masonry, which you're going to see coming up, is the really low barrier to entry with tools. Again, you almost need nothing. Just a few things to work the mud, and that's it really. It's beginner friendly, depending on the texture. Now, learning texture, that's a whole other boat, and that's going to take you some time. Liability risk is low, licensing risk is low. Customer demand is high for both homeowners and property managers, and these are going to be repeat clients for you. And the physical difficulty, it's actually not a very hard job to do either. Now, take a look at this revenue potential here, and I'm going to tell you something. These numbers are hard to come up with because drywall, more so than so many other of these skills, is something that as you get more experienced, you get way faster. So if you're charging the same amount of money per patch, but you're faster and faster and faster, guys, these numbers that I put here, they look nice already as they stand, but they can get way higher when you get really fast at doing this job. So this is one of my favorites here because really low barrier to entry. It does require the skill though, and I kind of like that. I like the fact that there's really a huge swing from being a new guy up to being super experienced, but the amount of money you can make moving up to that is also a great amount of money. And of course, there's a really high demand for this skill, so great niche to get started in. And now let's talk about pressure washing. And I'm going to be honest, pressure washing is not one of my favorites. And the number one reason it's not is look at the bottom of this slide. You're going to see the watchouts, etched concrete, damaged siding, water intrusion, chemical runoff. There is, the actual skill required for this. In fact, let's move into the skills slide. The actual skills for this, they're not hard to learn. But what may be hard to learn is to understand what all of the dangers are, because when you're spraying high pressure water, there are so many ways that you can ruin things. I didn't even put on here, you can break the glass. If that wand goes across in front of the glass and it's the wrong type of glass and hits that glass, you can just bust that glass out. There's just a lot of risks, and the reason that I said the liability risk is medium is because, again, when I say liability risk, I'm really talking about the odds that you're going to do some really serious and severe damage that's going to cost you a lot of money and maybe your business. Revenue potential, however, when you get good at this and you get efficient at this and you really know what you're doing, can really be sky high. And also, this is a very high demand industry. And property managers are going to need this fairly routinely to get rid of all those grease and oil stains in the garages and on the driveways. But I want to point something out on this slide too, is the physical difficulty is very high. This is not one of the easiest jobs in the world, so you are going to need to be tough, and you're going to generally be doing this in the outdoors. So it's going to be cold, it's going to be hot, it's going to be windy, and you're going to be uncomfortable, which I think is partly why it lends itself to being such a profitable industry to get started in. Now, another thing that I think is one of the downsides of pressure washing is that barrier to entry in terms of tools cost. You don't have to spend $1 million, but if we're trying to keep these all under 1,000, which is what we're doing on this video, it's a little harder to keep the pressure washing down under 1,000. It does mean you're going to need an entry-level pressure washer and a lot of other entry-level stuff. However, again, because the revenue can be so high, you should be able to roll that money that you make back into getting better equipment very quickly. And eventually you can get to the point where you've got a nice trailer with a huge gas motor and you're really pulling out like powerful equipment and getting these jobs done really fast and really professionally. So my summary on this one, honestly, it's not one of my favorite ones. It seems to be one of the most popular ones, but I don't think this is what I'm going to start out with personally if I have to move to a new city. I think there's just too many liabilities involved. There's too many risks. It's too uncomfortable, it's too unpredictable, and from what I can tell, you do have a whole lot of competition. It seems like most of these pressure washing companies are having to advertise a lot, and honestly, guys, I like working for property managers. I like having that river of work coming in and just knocking stuff out and getting paid, and I don't want to have to go market and sell myself to everybody all the time. All right, now cleaning. This is actually a really great one, guys, because like so many others, cleaning is one of these where you have a low barrier to entry with skills, and you have a really quick learning curve, low liability, and damn near zero licensing risks. So super low barrier to entry with skills. Let's look at the tools. As you can see, we've also got a super low barrier to entry with tools, and you don't even have to have all of these. You can really get started. A lot of times cleaning, you can get started with people who already have everything, and they just need you to show up with zero tools and just do the work with their cleaning equipment and their chemicals and stuff, and then you can build up into actually having your own over time. In fact, let's click over to the customer demand side, because what I want to point out is property managers, I have this listed as medium, And that's mostly just because most property managers already have a cleaner. But if you're patient and you work at this over time, if you do a great job and you know how to hold on to good clients once you find them, property managers need every single property cleaned between every single move in and move out. And they don't pay amazing for that. But I tell you what, they pay pretty damn well if you're willing to put in the time to be a really reliable company for them. They need reliability. They can't be having to have you go back all the time and clean better. But if you do a great job at a fair price, there's a really solid path forward with property managers in the cleaning space without having to charge like $25 an hour to do it. So my takeaway for this one is going to be that it's a great starter niche. It's got a low barrier to entry all around. You're not going to get rich doing it, but you can build a really solid business off of this without having to learn a bunch of handyman skills. Moving on to junk hauling, two things to point out here. Number one, customer demand sky high. This is a service everybody needs all the time. By the way, it is never affordable no matter who's doing it, so you can charge good money, but the physical difficulty is also very high. So this job is probably going to be more for the men. Not that the women can't do it, but it's probably going to be more for the men. Again, you're going to be outside. Junk is typically full of nails and splinters and sharp edges and stuff, so this is not necessarily a safe job, but it's a high demand job, and it's a job that takes a lot of physical difficulty where you may have slightly less competition because it's just not a job a lot of people want to do. And I just mentioned that it's never affordable. Look at the revenue on this, guys. I mean, yeah, you could make only $50,000 a year if that's the kind of business you're running. But as far as what you can make per year on that upper ceiling, the sky is the limit for you. If you can put together a really well managed, a well oiled machine for hauling junk, you can make tons and tons and tons of money. It's just not a thing that a lot of people are doing. And like I said, it is never affordable. So you should be the guy who's offering that service and charging that premium. It is very beginner friendly with a really low learning curve. However, I have liability risk set to high, and that's for two reasons. Number one, you can do some very serious damage while you're hauling junk. But number two, more importantly, is going to be the chemicals, whether that be radioactive chemicals, whether that be old lead batteries, whether that be asbestos, lead paint, all kinds of stuff. There are a lot of tripwires in the junk hauling industry that most people aren't going to be aware of. So I'm going to call that a high liability job. I do suggest if you're going to try to go into junk hauling, do a little bit of research and really make sure you're very aware of all of those tripwires. Like I said, asbestos, lead, things like that. The fines that come with those. You show up at the dump and you start dumping asbestos tiles at the dump, that could be a really big fine for you depending on where you're at. But still, I mean, look at the tools, guys. You really don't need much of anything. Now, I didn't put a vehicle on here because, of course, you are going to need a vehicle, whether that be a pickup truck, whether that be a van hauling a trailer behind it, whatever it is, you will need a vehicle. But I'm assuming you're going into this with a vehicle, and the actual tools that you need to get started is mostly just your own two hands. So in summary, for junk hauling, I'm going to say that especially if you're a strong man and you don't mind being outside working with your hands, junk hauling is going to be a super low barrier to entry for you to get into, really high demand that you can charge really great money for. Now, here's an interesting one. We're going to talk about screen repair, and I'm going to tell y'all something. Internally, inside my business, I don't like doing screens. I don't like repairing them. I don't like building them from scratch. It's not a fun job. However, I do make good money on them. However, I only do them because my property managers need me to, and I'm only doing them for the most part when I'm already on a job for something else. So all I'm really doing is I'm just charging more, I think, than the average person is charging for that one particular task because I hate doing it. So I make it profitable enough for me to not mind doing it. But we've got beginner friendly, we've got a very quick learning curve, we've got a low liability risk, and we've got a low licensing risk. So this is in fact easy to get into. The tools and the startup costs, they're almost zero. You can honestly get away with doing this without even any battery operated tools. You still probably want a drill, but I mean, you can usually do this without any battery or otherwise electrical operated tools. So low barrier to entry for the tools as well. Now the revenue I have set really low to this only because, like I said, I don't think, the reason I'm making good money, the reason I personally am making good money on screens is because I don't like doing them. I already have customers and they're generally an add-on. But I feel like if I tried to build this as just a screen only job, and by screen only, I mean, if I'm trying to be a handyman who specializes in screens, as opposed to if I'm trying to just build a screen company, which is a fully different thing where you need to be offering lots of other services that don't typically get wrapped up into the handyman world. If that's what you're trying to do, I just don't feel like without starting a full screen shop, I feel like without doing that, the revenue potential isn't as high for screens by themselves, but you still should know that you can make a lot of money on the screens when they're attached to other jobs. But that's why I have the revenue set so low here. And let's take a look at the next slide, which is customer demand and physical difficulty. And what I have here on this slide is basically the customer demand is medium. It's a thing people want, but it's not a thing people are desperate for. There's kind of a low property manager demand for these, and it's not that they don't want you to do them, but again, they're generally not sending somebody out just to do a screen. That's going to be a thing that gets overlooked for years and years until finally they have a handyman who does them, and they can just say, hey, when you're doing that move out, let's replace those screens as well. But the physical difficulty is low, so if you have some reason to need jobs with a lower physical difficulty level, this might be one for you. So my verdict for this is, if you're trying to run it as a standalone business, don't expect to get rich off of it unless you want to build a full-on screen shop. But if you're trying to move into the general handyman world and you're just looking to start off with a few specialties, I do think this is a specialty that you can get started in pretty quickly, that you're going to find is going to be even more profitable for you when you're doing it as an add-on to other larger jobs. And finally, at the end here, window cleaning I find to be super interesting. And by the way, you can probably connect window cleaning with the screen building. That's one of those value adds I was talking about. But window cleaning is interesting. Nobody wants to clean their windows. And I would say in the middle to high income neighborhoods, a lot of people, believe it or not, are hiring people to come and clean their windows, whether it's just annually or quarterly or monthly. A lot of higher income people will put you on a schedule to come and clean their windows routinely. And it's beginner friendly. It's a low barrier to entry, very little chance you're going to need any licensing, and very little liability involved. So this is actually a really great one to get involved in that I don't see a lot of competition out there for. The tool startup cost on here, with the exception of the ladder, is basically zero. Customer demand is high. Repeat customer demand is high. Selling door to door is high. Property managers need you. And the physical difficulty, other than being on a ladder, isn't really that bad, guys. Now let's take a look at the revenue. I don't have it set really high, but again, every business is what you make of it. If you can provide that stellar service, and more importantly, if you can get super efficient, it's when you get the speed involved that you start really cranking that revenue up on a per hour, per week, per month, or whatever basis. If and when you get super efficient and you're professional and you have these repeat clients, then filling out that schedule and bringing your revenue up really just becomes a matter, almost like a pool route, of growing your route, growing your repeat client business. I think this can be a really profitable one. Try to pair it up with the screen repair if you don't mind doing screen repair and rebuilds. And this is going to be a really great avenue for you to get into that can get your foot in the door for lots of other future jobs too. All right, guys, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I can tell you I've enjoyed building it. It's taken me about a week to put all this together, including the slides and everything else. But I think this is going to come in really, really handy for helping y'all just kind of get your foot in the door and getting your businesses started. So comment on this video. That helps me a lot. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't clicked subscribe. But comment. I'll answer all the comments. Email me at bulletproofhandymanbusiness@gmail.com. I personally answer every single email that you guys send to bulletproofhandymanbusiness@gmail.com. I'm not too big to do that yet, and I kind of hope I never am, to tell you the truth. But with all that being said, I love you guys. I hope you're out there killing it, and I'll see y'all on the next one.